Trying to get out of bed for work was almost impossible, which was strange for me because I was always a high energy sort of person. A few hours of sleep and I was always good to go. I was at a loss as to what was happening. After a barrage of tests, even my doctors couldn't find anything wrong with me. The only recent change in my life was my boyfriend who had just moved in. I was sharing a bed for the first time in my life. Steven was the first love of my life, and this was my first serious relationship. I didn't want to spoil things by making him sleep in the spare room. I liked having Steven around. He made a real fuss over me, and he would bring me chamomile tea every night before bed. The pain in my hip was sharp and pulsated up the right side of my body. I jumped from my bed and nearly collapsed to the floor as I struggled to get to the bathroom. "Steven, can you get in here?" I cried. A big dark bruise covered my hip as if I was assaulted in my sleep with a metal bar. "What's wrong?" Steven said as he came rushing into the bathroom. "Did I fall off the bed or something?" Steven had a weird expression on his face. I could swear he looked guilty about something. "Probably, I don't know." His response was dismissive, which sent my brain spiraling with all sorts of thoughts. "This is not normal, Steven. I think there's something wrong with me." "You should probably see a doctor then," he coldly said before quickly leaving the bathroom. My doctor was still at a loss and suggested I should see someone who could rule out anything nefarious. Steven was still dismissive as we drove to the hospital. "I'm sure it's nothing, you're probably just stressed from work." People don't wake up with bruises over stress, I angrily thought to myself. The doctors at the hospital took my blood and did all sorts of tests on me, including a stress test. I should have been happy when the test came back clear, but it only made me feel like I was losing my mind. Something was definitely wrong with me. "I would prescribe you sedatives, but your blood work already shows you're on nitropam," explained the doctor. I was dumbstruck and wasn't sure what the doctor was talking about. I have never taken so much as a painkiller in my life. The doctor's face looked how I felt. He took out his charts and looked over them again. "No, you definitely tested positive for nitropam, which is a powerful sedative." Later that evening, as I sat in bed, a million different thoughts ran through my head. How was that possible? As I sat there, Steven walked in with my chamomile tea, and just as I was about to put it to my lips, I was struck by the most unnerving thought. The realization that my boyfriend was drugging me hit me like a ton of bricks and filled me with a dread I had never felt before. I emptied the contents of the cup down the sink in the bathroom before jumping back into bed. "Was it hot enough for you?" Steven asked as he jumped into bed beside me. "Perfect as always." I felt as if I was lying beside a complete stranger. Had I ever really known him? I lay there terrified, wondering what unimaginable things he was doing to me while I slept. I must have drifted off at some stage because when I woke up, the room was a mess, and Steven was nowhere to be seen. My body ached all over and it felt like I had been in a fight. What the hell was he doing to me in my sleep? I had made the decision to go to the police, but I needed evidence, or it was just my word against his. I purchased a hidden camera and set it up in the bedroom, pointing towards the bed. I woke up, exhausted as usual, which unfortunately meant he had done something to me while I slept. But I had it on camera. I opened my laptop to check the footage, and for the first couple of hours of sleep, nothing happened. For a moment I had hoped I was imagining everything until I watched myself jolt from the bed. At first, I couldn't believe what I was doing. It felt like I was watching a horror movie as I watched myself crawl up the bedroom wall like some possessed demon. I continued to crawl up the wall onto the ceiling, looking down over Steven like I was ready to pounce on him. Steven woke, and it was strange watching him because it was like he was prepared for what was happening and didn't seem fazed by it. He took a stick out from under the bed as I pounced from the ceiling above, and he spent the next hour fighting me off. I watched as he subdued me on the bed before pulling out handcuffs and cuffing me to the bed. I looked at the marks on my wrists, which made sense now. As soon as Steven came home from work, I ran and threw my arms around him. Why didn't you tell me what we were doing and going through every night? Stephen shrugged his shoulders. I thought you knew, and usually the drugs I was giving you made things a little easier. Why are you even still with me? My last girlfriend was a jealous psychopath. You're a walk in the park compared to her. I'm stationed at the North Pole. What I found here could be the end of us all. This is not a cry for help. This is not a request for rescue. No. This is a warning. I should clarify. I'm stationed near a North Pole, not the one that sits stationary at the top of the world, but the North Geomagnetic Pole that tends to move 50 kilometers or so a year. I am alone here now in our quiet base that used to be considered the northernmost populated location in the world. Well, alone unless you count whatever's out there in the ice. On the other side, and despite the cold calculating intelligence radiating from it, I'm not sure it qualifies as any sort of life as I understand it. The plane that brought us here seems to mock me as it just sits there on the runway. If I were a pilot, I could have flown out of here, left this empty graveyard of a place behind. When I was a kid, that had been my dream. But it just wasn't in the cards for me. I didn't even realize I was colorblind until I took the physical, that what I saw as yellow or blue wasn't what my friends or family did. It's funny how perspective works. Perspective. Like when I try to convince myself that maybe my teammates are alive somewhere else after all. I prefer that interpretation over the most likely truth that they died the moment they plunged into that gaping wound in the ice. And that they did not die well. It began with an unnerving transmission. We were flying out to relieve the summer crew ready to spend the next few months stationed in the unrelenting dark of the polar night. The transmission came in broken, fragmented from the outgoing crew. Something about lights, something about the ice opening up. The last voice we heard was calm in a way that felt wrong. Not the calm of someone in control, the calm of someone who had stopped caring about getting out. We landed anyway, protocol demanded it. And besides, what will we have reported? Unsettling radio chatter? The base was empty when we arrived, neat, orderly, like they had simply stepped out for a walk and never came back. Most meals were half-eaten, journals open on the bunks. One coffee mug was still warm. We told ourselves there was an explanation, because there always is. Thom found it first, a fracture in the ice about 200 meters from the base. Not a natural crack. Something had pushed up from beneath, splitting the surface in a near-perfect circle. We stood around the edge of it in a loose cluster, our breath coming out in white clouds, and none of us said anything for a long time. It was deep, the kind of deep that your eyes refuse to process properly. You keep expecting to see the bottom, and instead you just keep seeing more dark. Brandy said she could see something moving down there. I told her it was just the ice shifting. The way sound travels strangely out here, the way the light bends. These things play tricks, I told myself the same thing. That night, I woke up to find Thom's bunk empty. He had taken his coat and his boots, which meant it wasn't sleepwalking. He had made a decision and walked out into the dark on his own 2 feet. We found his tracks leading straight to the hole. Nothing leading back. Brandy hit her head badly the morning after Thom disappeared. Slipped on ice near the equipment shed. The concussion kept her inside for days, which, in hindsight, may have been the only thing that slowed what was happening to her. The others were not so lucky. One by one over the following week, they began to change. Distracted first, distant, spending long hours staring out at the sky with an expression I can only describe as hungry. They stopped eating though, stopped sleeping, started drifting towards that hole in the ice, like something was pulling them by a thread that I couldn't see. They talked about colors, a specific color, or maybe a frequency of light, one that the aurora was putting out. Something that sat just outside a normal human perception, apparently, because I couldn't see it. My color blindness, the thing that I had mourned as a kid when it cost me my dream of flying, I began to understand it was keeping me here, keeping me sane. I watched my team dissolve one by one. I could not follow them into whatever it was calling them. I could only watch the hole grow wider. "Thom's gone," I grimly told Brandy the next morning. "He went to the color," Brandy had smiled to me, wildly, madly. "I really wish you could see it." Camp was deadly quiet when it was just Brandy and I left. I tried to convince myself that she was getting better, that we could leave soon. I told myself that she didn't have that all too familiar haunted look in her eyes, that she had grown gaunt and distracted for other reasons. It was hard to admit to myself that as Brandy began to heal from her concussion, she'd begun to succumb to something far worse. She stared wildly at the sky throughout the night and darkness of the day, taking gasping, erratic breaths, at times ignoring the cold to stand outside and take an unobscured view of the sky. Finally, one night I had a vivid dream in which I looked outside to see a pale figure, skeletal in frame, dressed in only socks and long johns, drifting unsteadily past my window. When I woke up the next morning, Brandy was gone. I grabbed my jacket and boots, sprinting out the door. She'd have been gone for hours by then, but running after her let me hold on to the crumbling facade that I wasn't already too late. Maybe, I found myself thinking sickly, maybe she'd fallen, maybe she'd frozen peacefully in the night. Death seemed like a kindness after I found where she had gone. Any iota of hope I had left died when Brandy did, and that coupled with the utter gut-punch feeling of true loneliness. Well, losing her hit me hard. I think that's why my hopeless trek back to the base took me longer to notice the bear than it should have. I was distraught and distracted. I froze as the massive creature approached. In my haste, I'd gone out unarmed. I was so focused on the threat of the hole in the earth, my usual vigilance had slipped, and I had been thinking about how this is a wild place, populated by wild things. It looked emaciated, but even then, would have had a good 300 kilos on me. And starving. Well, that just made it all the more dangerous. The bear stared up at the lights above us, watching the same shifting bands that had entranced my coworkers. I thought for a moment that perhaps it wouldn't see me, that I could make it back to the base unnoticed. Wishful thinking. The moment I moved, snow crunched under my boot. The bear paused in the middle of another staggering, weaving step, its head instantly snapping in my direction. Its eyes met mine, heavy with some sort of animalistic insanity. It was skin and bones under white fur matted with blood and filth. Those bead-black eyes seemed to bulge as the flesh and fat around them had receded. It bared its teeth at me, and I thought I'd met my end. To my absolute shock and relief, the moment passed. Its eyes quickly left mine and returned upwards to the sky. It trudged onwards towards the hole. The fact that a starving bear chose to follow the lights in lieu of pursuing an easy meal, somehow that terrified me more than how whatever was down there managed to lure my team away. A few days after Brandy finally fell prey to it, I made another trek to the pit, which had become even more massive. For the first time, I noticed something move within it. Fine hair-like tendrils reached out to me as I approached. I nearly lost my balance and tumbled in while looking down to see all of those eyes staring back at me. I could feel the stale air around it. It stank of burning hair and flesh and old things. Even through my face covering, I could still smell it. I think I have done the best that I can, and hopefully some good will come from me sharing this. What I cannot claim, though, is to have found any semblance of hope. I have no idea how to close this ever-growing wound in our world that bleeds out madness. Some sort of alien insanity that I suspect originates from another place entirely. It's overwhelming, sickening even, to just be in the proximity of it. Lately, when the wind isn't howling outside, I swear I can detect a rhythmic hum in the distance that I can't help but wonder if it is a subtle sound of something breathing. I cannot even begin to imagine what my team, or any creature whose eyes can actually process the colors in the sky, must have dealt with. I will not call for a rescue. The last thing I need is for more people to witness the colors in the sky and meet the same fate as the others. All I can do is share this warning. If this little slice of hell was confined here like I was, perhaps dying alone, out in the cold once my supplies run out, wouldn't seem so bad, but it's not confined here. I mean that. I realized recently that it takes me slightly longer to walk to the edge of it from our base than it did when we first arrived, despite the ever-growing size. I know this sounds crazy, but I fear that that portal is somehow tied to the geomagnetic pole, that it has begun to wander and will continue to shift elsewhere, luring in any living things unfortunate enough to see and process the light. As the hole widens, I've begun to sense something else radiating from it. That same cold intelligence anticipating and yearning, but worse, a satisfaction. And despite everything I've witnessed recently, knowing that whatever is on the other side of that portal is happy, that it's getting what it wants, well, that terrifies me most of all. Flutter killed half of my mom's generation, so I refused to fall in love. I didn't mean to fall in love. I hadn't felt a flutter since I was 8, and the boy at summer camp made my cheeks feel warm. Thankfully, I was just a child, so my body was able to fight it. I was treated with suppressing medications. Mom wanted me to get my heart numbed, but that wasn't an option until I was 18. When my mother was a child, Flutter decimated half of the teen population. There was no real cure, only a medication that severed the ability to have feelings. I lost color when I was 13. When I cut into my palm, there was no sting, no pain, rivulets of gray beating down my wrist. Casper Klein, my new seatmate, wasn't supposed to be able to smile. I wasn't supposed to be able to have feelings, and yet, somehow I did. I sensed it, a single flutter in my gut, my cheeks growing warm. Mom told me Flutter would kill me, ripping my body apart, but I didn't care. I grew intoxicated with the boy and threw my pills down the sink. Colors came back, igniting across my vision, feeling so many feelings slamming into me all at once, contorting my body and mind. When Casper kissed me, the flutter I had always feared felt normal and real, like it was always supposed to be there. The flutter between our lips felt warm. The people in white found us entangled around each other, and when they pulled me away from him, my screech was animalistic. Casper filled me with new emotions, bliss, euphoria, pain. I didn't want it taken away, but it was when my mother slapped me across the face when my brain finally jolted awake. Casper was dead next to me, a hollowed out nothing swarming with butterflies. I could see the outline of his spine, stringy green entangling of bones. His eyes were still open, lips split open in a grin, glass wings slipping from his skeletal mouth. Something was growing on his dead flesh, a silky white substance wrapping him up almost like a cocoon. Fully awake and blinking through a thick mind fog, I could feel them. No longer fluttering, they writhed under the flesh of my stomach, a growing spiderweb of green spreading across my skin. I opened my mouth to cry, only to choke on them, forcing their way up my throat. The sound of wings filled my skull, fluttering in my ears, and I screamed. An unknown emotion taking hold. I wasn't used to feeling fear. "Mom." I managed to splutter through a mouthful of butterflies, but my mom was gone and my body was no longer mine. Filled and made up of insects making up my bones, rewriting me, body, mind, and soul. Somehow though, when frenzied wings finally erupted through my heart, swarming the air in a vivid blurred scarlet, my lips formed a dazed smile that wasn't mine. I couldn't wait to be reborn. That's all Dead Air Radio has for you tonight. If these stories found you at the right moment, hit that subscribe and like button so more of you can find me. We are building a catalog for everyone, everywhere. And if you really want to take Dead Air Radio with you, we're on Spotify and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Search Dead Air Radio, hit follow, and I'll be in your ears wherever you want to take me. I'm MrMcGrinn. See you at the next transmission. And if you need something more right now, check this one out.